Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to the Life in the Movies podcast. We are on episode 8. Like I said, my name is Ryan Cam. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm so happy that you have clicked on this video. And today, my co-host Jacob and I, we're going to be talking about streaming movies and how they're being nominated for Oscars. So we're just going to be having a fun conversation about how streaming movies have just come such a long way in such a short time. But before we get into that, I want to introduce my co-host. He is the main man. He is Jacob Martin. Jacob, how you doing, my good man?
I'm doing pretty good, Ryan. It's been a pretty good week so far. It's been pretty good keeping up on track with different movies and projects that I'm doing on my side of things. Life's been pretty good as well. I had a good family visit with extended family this past weekend. Had a really good meal there. It's been pretty good on my end. Movies have been pretty good. I saw several prominent movies in theaters. I saw the Uncharted movie, and I got to see a re-release of Belfast, as I missed it in theaters originally. So I saw some good movies in theaters and some other movies for different projects on my channel. My second channel is going pretty good. Oh, sorry, my phone went off. Sorry about that. My second channel is going pretty good. I'm still on reading To Kill a Mockingbird, which I read that originally in my freshman year of high school, and then I did not fully understand the impact of the book at the time. I was like, this is boring. Why would anyone be reading this? I didn't become a fan of the material until I saw the movie, and the movie was fantastic. So it's great looking back, rereading the book and saying, yeah, this is a really amazing book with a lot of great themes and messages put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. The To Kill a Mockingbird movie has to be in the ballpark of one of the better movies based on books of all time, because I think it was a legal requirement in most high school English classes that you either had to read To Kill a Mockingbird or Romeo and Juliet, and sometimes both in the same year.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
read both.
oh wow, you too. We
Yeah.
ended up we ended up watching the movie, reading the book, and then watching the movie. And reading the book was very good. Let's not get that twisted. However, I think the movie did a good job because there was actually there's actually some plot lines in the book that the movie trims, which I honestly think works out for the better. That's just my opinion, though. And I mean, Gregory Peck, like that man could act like no one else could. Like no one, like when you picture Atticus Finch, your mind immediately goes to Gregory Peck. And this is one of those that I hope never gets remade. I know it's a musical, or not a musical, but it's a stage play Aaron Sorkin had a heavy involvement in. But I hope they never remake that because it's one of those movies that just it feels oddly relevant nowadays, and and in the best way possible. So I hope that it probably will be remade, which will be unfortunate, but I hope that it remains as is for a while.
Yeah, I wouldn't want a remake of To Kill a Mockingbird. Who would top Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch? He was the absolute goat as Atticus Finch. And even when rereading the book, I just picture Gregory Peck in the role because he just embodied that character so well.
Yeah, not to mention that in the movie, like To Kill a Mockingbird is one of the has a really underrated villain in Robert E. Lee Ewell. That man is just horrible. It's heavily implied, and the movie does a really good job of implying that he's done some really, really bad things to his daughter Mayella. And I won't go too deep into that woods because it's subject matter that's just a little near the knuckle for this podcast. But the book and the movie does a great job of heavily implying that this whole thing involving Tom Robinson is just rumor and innuendo. It's smoke and mirrors to distract the fact that his life and his relationship with his daughter is just a train wreck. And instead of looking inward and trying to fix himself, he blames it on someone on someone that doesn't have his skin color, because unfortunately racism was still incredibly prominent around that time, especially in the South.
Hmm. Yeah, it was a really, really raw book to read. I think I had seen there's controversy centered around the subject matter now, and I've seen like articles on whether the book is acceptable, should it be read in public schools or not. And there's some schools systems that have even banned it, which I think is just wrong personally, because there's a lot of well executed themes that you can learn from whether reading the book or watching the movie, especially in high school. One of which is the fact that, racism is wrong, period. And I think the fact that you're trying to cover that up in certain parts of the society, just because there's a few slurs in the book, that's not because the book is bad. It's because the character saying it makes it bad. And there's a difference between that. And I think some people tend to forget that.
Yeah, once you start banning books, it's such a slippery slope, because you like ban a book because of the subject material. Well, depending on, like, say, if it describes a horrific incident, it depends on the context of the incident, but if it is truly horrific, then okay, let's try and do that. But then you slowly kind of start to bend the definition of what makes something wrong for kids to read and what makes it right. It's just something that I'm just not a fan of. I'm a fan of letting kids figure this kind of stuff out on their own, and making their own decisions. And the argument is like, they're kids, what do they know? They will know eventually, and over time, if you play your cards right, they're going to become smarter, because they will expose themselves to these kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So anyway, yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird is awesome. Everyone should read it at least once. And one more note, the author of it, Harper Lee, with the exception of one book, like I think released in like 2017 or 18, like she never wrote another book again, which, I mean, considering that To Kill a Mockingbird is one of the greatest books ever written, and Harper Lee only wrote the one book for like entire human decades, that's pretty impressive in my opinion.
Yeah, that was really impressive that she did that. And she pretty much like banked her whole career off of that book. It's a really amazing success story that you just have one book and that pretty much shaped your whole life. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, very, very, very fascinating. But as far as life stuff goes on my end, it's been a little, it's been a tad stressful. Nothing that isn't fixed now, but this past weekend, my car brakes, they just pretty much stopped working. I went to go back out of my job in my parking lot, and I went to start the car. I went to hit the brakes, and the brakes just was, it was nothing. The pedal went straight to the floor. And so I'm like, this is not good. And so it turns out, to make a long story short, there was a part on the actual brake itself that got stuck. And because it got stuck, basically the brakes, the brake pads ended up getting eaten away. So my car basically, when it went forward, it sounded like it like sounded like you were like grinding your teeth. Like, it was pretty noticeable. But by the time this episode airs, I will have gotten it back. It's been on the operating table all weekend, but it's really been a lesson on being grateful for things that we usually take for granted. Because when you use the brakes in your car, you think, oh, they'll always be there. And, well, no, they won't. And it's important to be mindful and take care of things like that. And so I'm just very, very grateful to God that I was not driving anywhere, and that I discovered it once I was like backing out at like 1 or 2 miles an hour, not even that. So someone upstairs was looking out for good old Ryan here.
Yeah, that's definitely a blessing right there. You gotta always look at all the positive. No matter what obstacles you face, there's always like 10 or more good things to come out of a situation like that. You're definitely lucky, Ryan.
Yeah, and then Also, my cat either got injured or got a blood clot in one of her legs. She used to be one of the most springiest cats you've ever seen in your life, and she's actually getting better by the time this airs. I think she is about to be at full strength or close to it, but for a couple days, it's like she would hop up and her back legs she would slip. And so that never used to happen. She was super graceful, and she was given meds, and it's looking like she's going to pull through just fine. But wow, it was I was not ready for that because I love this cat. Like she is so close to our family. She's a rescue. She was a friend of my mom's cat, but she also had these two big dogs, like 100-pound dogs, and she was just smothered by them. And so technically it was a rescue, but maybe it's a bit weird. But she's gonna be just fine. But for a couple of days, it was like we were really really worried.
Mm. Yeah, I'm glad your cat's doing a lot better. It's always sad whenever something bad happens to, especially a pet, because you grow up with these pets and you live with them for a good chunk of your life. And then when something bad happens to them, it's definitely hard recovering. I had two dogs that me and my sister had when we were real little, and then it was several years ago, and both of them sadly are no longer with us. One because of old age, another because of like tumors, and then he had seizures, and eventually that ended up giving out and killing him. So it's really sad to lose a pet, even though some people are like, it's just a pet, it's just an animal, what's the point? But it's almost like your family. And when you lose somebody that close, it's really hard to get over that.
Yeah, I used to be one of those people like people get like upset when their pet died. I'm like, who cares? But it was in this instance where I was like, oh, please don't go. It was like I understood like in that moment. Like it became clear to me.
Hmm.
Well, anyway, it's gotten a bit dark, so let's try to lighten things up with some movie talk. And Jacob, I've noticed on your channel you cover in some Del Toro stuff and some other things, and one of the ones that stuck out to me was your Pink Panther series. You finally got into the Steve Martin one. So
Yes.
how was that?
It's been quite a few years since I've seen the Steve Martin one. It's probably been like a good, probably over 5 years maybe since I've last seen the Pink Panther remake with Steve Martin. Of course, that and the old cartoons were my introduction to the Pink Panther movies. I didn't even know who Peter Sellers was. I didn't watch any of those older Pink Panther films, most of which I had never seen until when I was going through this series on my channel. And so I grew up with the two Steve Martin ones. And so it was interesting watching the Steve Martin film for the first time since I've now seen all the Peter Sellers films. Honestly, I don't mind this remake. Like, Steve Martin is no Peter Sellers, but he's still he still embodies the character to what Steve Martin does best. Like, he does some of the mannerisms that Peter Sellers does, but it's not like he's doing a caricature of what Peter Sellers did. I felt like Steve Martin did his own spin on Clouseau while also honoring what Peter Sellers did at the same time. And I'd say of all the actors who played him, I'd say Peter Sellers is the best. Steve Martin would be my number two. Like, I really enjoy Steve Martin in this movie, and even the supporting players in this I really like. I especially like John Reno as Gilbert Ponton. They have the best chemistry in this whole movie, and I like the running gag when Clouseau tries to do the sneak attack on his partner, and he just punches him back. Good one. I
Thank you.
love that.
Yes,
There's just there's
that's amazing.
so many good moments in that movie. You can't go wrong with the I would like to buy an hamburger.
Yeah,
That I've seen that so many times, and that always gets the biggest laugh out of me. No matter how many times I've seen that, that always puts a grin on my face. Now, I don't think it's as sharply funny as like some of the Peter Sellers films. I think if this was my first time watching the remake, I will definitely pick apart certain aspects of the story. The mystery, I don't think, is the most smart or engaging or anything like that. In fact, if this was my first time watching it, it is extremely predictable on who the killer is and who has the diamond and all that. But the movie's still fun for what it is. Another thing, too, what's cracks me up all these years later is the person who gets killed in the opening scene is Jason Statham, of all
Yeah.
people. And that cracks me up so much because we've seen him as like the big action star. He takes on a giant megalodon and survives over the top cartoonish stunts with The Rock, but he can't survive a poison dart.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
That
not gonna
cracks
lie. Casting Jason Statham in that was a very weird flex. Not to mention his girlfriend in the movie is Beyonce.
Beyonce.
No offense to Beyonce, she is a very talented woman, but talk about things that are not like the other in a Pink Panther movie. Beyonce is among them.
Yeah. I don't mind Beyonce's involvement in the film. Like, she's not the best actress by any means. I'm pretty sure they only cast her just to provide songs for the soundtrack. And the songs are pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, her acting is definitely not the best, but I don't mind her being in the movie, and she can actually hold her own, even with some of the seasoned actors, like Steve Martin, for instance. Like, I actually enjoyed some of those sequences in the movie. It's actually kind of crazy to me that and Dreamgirls came out like the same year, and she is phenomenal in Dreamgirls. That's like one of the best musical movies I've ever seen in my life, and I love like the ensemble cast and the talent and songs in that movie. So she was pretty busy that year movie wise. That and Pink Panther. That's pretty impressive on her.
Yeah, that's for sure. I have a soft spot for this movie. I get that it's not like the greatest ever, but Steve Martin is just, he's so funny in this. There was a time when he was like the funniest comedian in America. Like he was everywhere, he was in everything, and he was just consistently just bringing his A game. And he's slowed down since then. I do have a soft spot for the banjo playing Steve Martin, even though in his past he's been rather raunchy, but that's a whole nother side of Steve Martin. But I used to have a neighbor who lived next door to me who was from Sweden. She loved the Pink Panther movies, and so whenever we would see each other, I'd be like the good one, and she'd be like, "Thank you," and that would be our little inside joke. And I've always wanted to go to Sweden to see her again because I have a standing invite to go out and see her and her family and her extended family, and I'm more than welcome to. I was going to go, but then COVID shut everything down. But now it seems like things are finally open enough to where some travel is possible. So I think I may have to finally take her up on that offer.
Yeah, it'd be cool to revisit your old friend and travel to a part of the world that you're not familiar with. I'd be down to seeing what comes of that, and you can talk about that in your podcast. I think that'd be some great potential there.
Absolutely. And also, one more note on Pink Panther. Shout out to Kevin Kline, who actually does is really funny as the
It's
chief
Dreyfus.
Dreyfus. Thank you. The first meeting between him and Clouseau is so funny. He's like Inspector Jacques Clouseau, third class, and the badge flies, and Klein gets stabbed right there. It's like, ah, and I'm like, what rating is this movie again? This man just got stabbed.
Oh man, even there's some off-color jokes in this movie that like greatly went over my head as a kid. Like
There's
there's a
some.
scene in the casino and he's like, "I'd like to take a look at your booze." What? I'd like to take a look at your big brass booze. Wait, what?
Not to mention, there's an entire scene where Inspector Clouseau takes a Viagra or tries to take a
Oh
Viagra,
yeah, my
and when it
musical
falls,
cue for the middle-aged men.
yeah, that flew way over my head. And now I saw that scene recently as part of a Pink Panther video essay, and I was like, oh, it was a Viagra joke. Talk about things I missed when I was watching this. And then it's a great scene where the bathroom just gets destroyed and Martin's like, hello, and he's swinging the thing and then he crashes through the floor and lands in the lobby and looks at the person at the desk is like, we're gonna need fresh towels in 204. Ding! I'm like, it's a great scene.
I can't hate this movie. Like, if a comedy makes me laugh, regardless of the quality of the film, I'm still going to give it good points if it makes me laugh enough, even if it's not the best movie in the world. And I think The Pink Panther is definitely one of those movies for me.
For sure, for sure.
All right. The other movies that I have watched this past week, I did revisit the Muppet Movie for my Celebrating Disney series, and I love the Muppets. It's one of my favorite film franchises of all time. Funny story, I was never big on the Muppets as a kid. Like, I love Sesame Street. I watched a little bit of the Muppets. I knew the characters, but I never like regularly rewatched the Muppets at that young of age. I never became a big fan of the Muppets until I'd say about 2011 when me and my family went to Disney World and I saw the Muppet Vision attraction. And I love that so much. That made me want to physically go out and watch all the Muppet movies. And I got into the Muppet Show during that time. That was around the time the 2011 Muppets film was coming out as well. So we were seeing a new Muppet film in theaters while I was going back and checking out all the Muppet films. And I think now that I've seen every Muppet film, the Muppet Movie is my favorite of the Muppet movies. Like, I think it does a great job of doing like the origin story of the characters and how the Muppets got together and became big stars, and they go on this awesome road trip, and there's like an over-the-top villain. There's amazing celebrity cameos, catchy songs. What more do you want in a Muppet movie? There's just so many awesome stuff. I love the puppetry work. The characters are all great. You want to root for these characters. You want to see them succeed and fulfill their dreams. I love the meta commentary the movie has, that they're aware they're in a movie while they're making a movie, and they have the screenplay along with them in various parts of the movie. This is a fantastic movie. It's one of the best family movies of all time, and easily my favorite Muppet movie.
Yeah, the Muppet Vision ride, or not ride, but show is always something that I make a beeline for every time that I'm in Disney Hollywood Studios. It's one of my favorite parts of my favorite park in Disney World in Florida. Like, if I have to go to at least one Disney park, it's Hollywood Studios over everything else. It has all of my favorite stuff on there. Muppet Vision, the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, which no matter how many times that I see it, is still amazing. And I could just talk about that park for hours and hours and hours. But yeah, I actually, when I was on the side, I was doing this rewatch through all the movies I could find from the 1980s. I did all of 1980, and in 1981 there was a Muppet movie, and I thought it was the one you're talking about, but this is the first one. And
I think the one in 81, I think, is the Great Muppet Caper.
That's the one I watched, and I was thinking to myself, wait, is that Muppet Caper? And like, no, that was the sequel. And I quite enjoyed that one as well. Charles Grodin, I think his name is the villain there, and he recently passed away. May he rest in peace.
Yeah, he was great as that villain role. I love how over the top he got. Of course, I know him best as the dad in the Beethoven movies, but he's really good in the villainous role here, and I like some of the jokes related to that. Like, I like where you're meant to believe, like, it's so obvious that he's not singing the love song to Miss Piggy, and his voice was Dove, and Kermit's doing his own singing. If it was Miss Piggy's frame, she's like, I knew that was not your singing voice, your voice was Dove!
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's a good one, too. I pretty much enjoy all the Muppet movies with the exception of Muppets from Space. Like, that one I thought missed the mark on what made the Muppets special. They tried to explore Gonzo's origins in that movie, and the point of Gonzo as a character is we don't even know what Gonzo is. And so the fact that you try to make him like an alien, what are you doing, movie?
Just imagine a planet full of gonzos with big noses like that. It's just, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we got in that movie, and it's so stupid. That's the only Muppet movie that I can't stand. The Muppet movie is my favorite. Muppet Take Manhattan's pretty underrated. I love Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh,
I really, really love Muppet Treasure Island. That's like top 3 Muppet movies for me. And then we got the 2011 movie, which was like a great revival of the Muppet series. And I thought Muppets Most Wanted. A lot of people dogged on that movie because it wasn't as good as the 2011 film, but I enjoyed it for what it was.
yeah, Ricky Gervais is great in that movie. What's your name? It says on here your name is Igor. They're like, no, it's Igor. It's French.
Uh,
Oh, okay. And they just accept that. It's like do a little fact checking, will you please? Also, the novelty of David Brent in a Muppet movie just, I don't know, it feels off, but I kind of like it for that reason.
Actually, I think the joke with Ricky Gervais is Badgie, and but it looks like it's bad guy. But like, no, it's Badgie.
Oh yeah, you're right. I was thinking of the joke from Young Frankenstein
Young
version.
Frankenstein is Igor. We all make mistakes. The Muppet movie is so good. There's so many like crazy celebrity appearances in that movie. Like, it's so bizarre seeing so many random people show up in the movie. Like Richard Pryor's in the film, Steve Martin's in the film. You got like Cloris Leachman, Mel Brooks plays. I have to silence my phone real quick. Sorry about that.
No, it's cool.
Um, Steve Martin's in the film. I think I already said that. Mel Brooks has the most outrageous cameo as like this evil German scientist that wants to fry Kermit's brain. As there's like the villain plot of that movie is there's a Charles Durning plays Doc Hopper who owns a chain of frog legs and he wants Kermit's legs pretty much. And that's the plot of the movie. And so he hires Mel Brooks as a German scientist to kidnap him and to fry his brain so he can have Kermit's legs. And it is just so out there and so bizarre, but it's Mel Brooks and it's automatically funny.
Oh
The
yeah.
strangest cameo, though, is Orson Welles, who is the big studio head who gives the Muppets their contract. Like, I don't know how much they got Orson Welles to star and cameo in a Muppet movie, but that was such a cool cameo, as weird as it is.
Still not as weird as those ones he did for that like wine. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like, the French champagne, where it's like he's clearly like really drunk doing these. Like I'll DM it to you.
I am not familiar with those ads,
I'll
but
DM it to you. It is
it sounds
amazing.
crazy. All right, I'll
Whatever Jim Henson paid Orson Welles, it was probably half the budget.
but it was still a good cameo regardless. And then for my superhero Saturdays, building up my excitement for the Batman, I revisited Batman Begins,
Oh yeah.
one of the best reboots in cinema history, and was a great revival for Batman after the epic disaster of a movie that was Batman and Robin. Batman Begins was like the much needed comeback that Batman needed. I love the origin storytelling and how Christopher Nolan did the non-linear style where we follow Bruce Wayne's training and mentorship under the League of Shadows while we flash back to the origin stuff with his parents getting killed and diving more into the criminal organization and investigating all that corruption going on in Gotham City. I love how that was played out simultaneously to better pace the movie and not make it like another snooze fest, which you could easily do in a reboot film. Nolan is a master of pacing his stories, and I love what he did with Bruce Wayne's origin storytelling and how he becomes the Batman. Christian Bale to date is my favorite Batman. Like, I think of all the actors, of course, we'll see what Pattinson will do in a couple weeks, but of all the actors to date, I feel like Bale is the best one to balance the duality of both Bruce Wayne and Batman. I feel like other actors, they do better on one part over the other. Like, some people I feel like do Bruce Wayne over Batman better, and others do Batman better than Bruce Wayne. But I feel like Bale balanced both. Like, you see the complexities of both Bruce Wayne and Batman within the movie. Like as Bruce Wayne, he has to maintain his image of being like this like billionaire playboy who's rough around the edges and does a lot of like overblown stunts to get attention. But that's not him. He's Batman. He's the crime fighting vigilante. So there's this like big duality of characters that was so fascinating to explore. And I feel like Batman Begins to date is the best movie that explored that in his origin movie. And of course, you got a great cast, an epic score, exciting action set pieces. This movie put Christopher Nolan on the map and pretty much made him like the big director that he is today, this and the Dark Knight trilogy. All around, this is an amazing movie.
Yeah, it was. Christopher Nolan had directed a couple of enjoyable movies in Following and Insomnia, but it was Batman Begins that really was like, okay, this is the dude to look out for. And minus Tenet, I wasn't a big fan of that one. He has just had nothing but strength after strength. And Batman Begins might be the sleeper hit of the entire trilogy, which is saying something because the Dark Knight trilogy is pretty much all excellent. I will entertain reasons as to why Dark Knight Rises is not that good. I will entertain that. However, I just love that movie. I love the whole Dark Knight trilogy, just from beginning to end. It is a masterpiece. As much as that word gets thrown around, it is a legit masterpiece. As far as Batman Begins goes, this has some of my favorite elements of the whole trilogy. Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, I thought he was great as that. I love the relationship that he and Bruce Wayne have. Ken Watanabe as the fake Ra's al Ghul, I thought was handled very well. He's only in it for like a couple scenes, but it's always nice to see Ken Watanabe. Cillian Murphy, who is a scarecrow here, he doesn't really get talked about all that much in the Dark Knight trilogy. And it's a shame because when I saw this movie originally, he gave me nightmares. Like that character with just the bag over his head and the fear gas, it took me out for weeks. Like it was just brutal stuff. And it also helps that Cillian Murphy kind of had a bit of a demented edge to him because when he's like he hears a Batman, he's like, the Batman's coming. And like that was great. Like Cillian Murphy, just in general, I feel like doesn't get talked enough. But everything that I've seen him in, he's knocked it out of the ballpark. He's wrapping up Peaky Blinders as of this recording, and he's going to be in Nolan's next movie, Oppenheimer, and I know he's going to crush it in that.
Yeah, put Cillian Murphy with Christopher Nolan, and it's always a great mix. And I thought he was really good in Inception as well.
Oh yeah, he was great in Inception as well, and also Dunkirk as well. He's not in the movie much, but he's excellent in there too.
Yeah, Cillian Murphy's like one of the most underrated actors out there. Like people don't talk about him that much, and whenever he does show up, he's usually one of the standouts. And yeah, people with Batman Begins love talking about, oh, Bruce Wayne's origins and Ra's al Ghul and Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, and all the cool gadgets like the tumbler and stuff. But no, we forget about the Scarecrow, who's a part of the puzzle as well. And I love the exploration of fear within the storytelling, how Bruce Wayne uses his own fear of bats in order to instill fear into his enemies, which I thought was a brilliant touch. And then you got the Scarecrow, who just drugs everybody with fear gas, hallucinating their own nightmares. It's just really creepy stuff, like you said. There's just some really cool stuff within this movie that's so awesome.
I think it's Batman on horseback or it's the policeman on horseback, and it looks like just a straight demon.
I think it's the Scarecrow.
I was gonna say it's the Scarecrow. My brain kicked on, and I remembered that. That was terrifying. And when Batman finally turns the fear gas on Scarecrow, it's great. It is like, now let's see what you fear, and he sprays it on him, and Scarecrow is just like, ah! And Batman's face is melting, and like, oh, forget if you like edit Ra's al Ghul out of this and just focus on Scarecrow, it's almost as good. And of course, the Ra's al Ghul stuff is the heart of the movie, so of course keep that in. But it's a shame that Cillian Murphy kind of gets smothered by the rest of the trilogy. Not his fault. The rest of the trilogy is just outstanding. But he has a small part in Dark Knight. I love the line. I told you my compound would take you places. Those places where you. I told you my compound would take you places. I didn't say there were places you necessarily wanted to go. And then in Dark Knight Rises, he's the guy who's like the judge. He's like exile or death, and it turns out you're pretty much wanting to take the death because you're pretty much walking on ice, which just no, this Florida boy will pass. Thank you.
Or actually, for him, it's more like sentence death by exile.
That was a great touch.
Yeah, I love Cillian Murphy in all three movies. And I think, Ryan, you're about to plug on your channel our collab for Batman and Robin, which should be coming real soon. One thing I want to bring up is the fact that I bring this up in my part of the video that Joel Schumacher, if he had gotten this chance to direct a third Batman movie after Batman and Robin, he would have cast Coolio as the Scarecrow in that movie. And I thought that is just so random of casting. Like, Coolio as the Scarecrow?
Either Coolio or Nicolas Cage.
I can't even picture that.
I mean,
did Coolio even act? I know he cameoed in Batman and Robin just briefly, but I know Coolio, he's like the Gangsta's Paradise guy.
Yeah, it's so bizarre, but also Nicolas Cage was considered for it, and on paper, that actually doesn't sound like a bad idea. Think about the couple of years that Nicolas Cage had before then. He was in Face Off, he was in Con Air, and he was also in The Rock. There was arguably no bigger action star than Nicolas Cage, so casting him in it was actually quite a good idea. But seeing him as a Scarecrow would have been bizarre, to say the least.
Yeah. I can picture Nicolas Cage as the Scarecrow because he can pull off crazy. We all know that. But it would have been interesting what would have happened if Schumacher did another Batman movie. That's definitely a crazy little what if.
Yeah,
especially after how Batman and Robin turned out.
Yeah, after Batman and Robin, pretty much all the Batman movies just were like, all right, you need to take a break. Like it's not us, it's clearly you. And learning about all the pitches for stuff, like for example, there was one called Batman Dark Knight, but DAR capital KNIGHT. It would have been basically The Dark Knight Returns, based off of the legendary graphic novel by Frank Miller. Batman Unchained, which is the Schumacher movie that we never got. From what I read, Schumacher was supposed to set it in Arkham Asylum. Batman was supposed to be not commissioned, but committed there. And he would have had these crazy hallucinations, which elements of that plot would end up in Batman the Animated Series, and it would also inspire Batman Arkham Asylum. So from the scraps of those kind of mediocre ideas, we got some episodes of Batman the Animated Series and one of the best Batman video games ever. So that's why I always try and give Joel Schumacher credit, because his ideas may seem crazy at the time, but given a chance, there was actually some merit.
Yeah, I think even with Batman Forever, he had originally planned to do darker movie in vein of what Tim Burton did, but then Warner Bros. Like, no, you got to keep it light, you got to keep it family friendly. And so there were some dark scenes that he shot for the movie that were left on the cutting room floor. Like
Yeah.
there's like this one scene where like Batman confronts like a giant bat, which is like representative of his fears or something like that, and that was cut from the movie. And there are calls now, especially after Schumacher's death, to hashtag release the Schumacher cut.
Oh
It'll
no.
be interesting
No,
how
no,
that would go. You don't think that's a good
you,
idea?
you don't want that. It's like that's one thing about the whole release the Snyder cut thing that I just don't like now. People are like, release this cut, release that cut. It's like, be lucky we got what we got and just be grateful for that. That's all I'm saying. But just in general, in my review for Batman Forever, I said that there is a better movie hidden somewhere here, but it was literally the case of McDonald's was looking over every page just so it's safe. It would be safe to market and create Happy Meal toys for this movie. So Schumacher's hands were tied. The studio's hands were tied. And I say in my review, I'm just glad we got something somewhat coherent. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's a better movie than people give it credit for. Like as cheesy as it is, it's still a good watch, and I like how they explore Batman even in that movie. Even if I don't think Val Kilmer's the best actor to play the character, but there's still cool elements within the story. I'm curious what would happen if we got the Schumacher cut. I don't know if it would make the movie any better because I think we'll still have the over the top antics of Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones. I don't know if that's going to be meshed well, but I'm curious. I'm so
All
curious.
Before we move on, all I will say is that I'm excited to see what Paul Dano is going to bring to the character because I have been itching for a more methodical Riddler, kind of like what we see in the Arkham games or in the animated series. And number two, I'm just glad that I'm glad that Batman and Robin happened because as bad as it was, it kind of laid the groundwork for what we got with the Dark Knight trilogy. So we can thank Schumacher for that at the very least.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And like Jacob alluded to, he's going to be joining me in my review for Batman and Robin. That's going to be dropping on the channel tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that.
All right, and then other movies that I've watched. I did rewatch The Shape of Water, as you previously alluded to earlier in the podcast, from Guillermo del Toro, and I think this is a fascinating movie. I saw it originally in theaters. I think I saw it at a dollar theater like a week after it won the Oscar for Best Picture. So I came in thinking, oh, I'm going to tear this movie apart because the Oscars picked a movie for Best Picture. I usually disagree with their picks heavily. They've had so many picks. I'm like, how is this Best Picture? I don't get that. But I was honestly surprised by this movie. Like, I thought The Shape of Water had a lot of really unique things going for it visually. Like, I really enjoy the color palette and visual style of the movie. And as bizarre of a story as this movie involving a cute girl and a fish monster, there's actually some really intriguing story elements in there where, as weird of a movie it is, it's actually a really, I guess, emotional story at the same time. Now, when I revisited the film again for the director project, I can definitely see the influences that Guillermo was going for. Like, he wanted to do his own Creature from the Black Lagoon story. Like, he said that he was disappointed when he saw the original Creature from the Black Lagoon because he wanted the girl to fall in love with the creature. That did not happen in the old movies. And so when he was rejected a chance to remake Creature from the Black Lagoon, he's like, okay, I'm going to tell my own version with an original title. And that's how we got The Shape of Water. And so when you look at it as a unique spin on Creature from the Black Lagoon, the movie's actually quite brilliant. Even though there's certain aspects of this movie that make me semi uncomfortable, especially when you get to like some of the R-rated aspects of the movie and some of the sequences. But the movie itself is really good, and it's actually I think my favorite Guillermo del Toro film because of how passionate he was in telling the story and the unique visuals that he brought to the table with this film. It's a really great movie. Maybe not my personal pick for Best Picture, but still a really awesome movie.
I still have not seen this one. I just haven't gotten around to it, but I will one day. I've heard amazing things about it.
Yeah, it's a really, really strong movie. If you're a fan of Guillermo's other work, it's definitely a must watch. I think there's a lot of cool factors into the storytelling, and I love the visuals that Guillermo brought. It's actually my favorite performance from Doug Jones, who was the fish monster in the movie, and he's like a regular in a lot of Guillermo del Toro films. He played the Abe fish creature in the Hellboy movie. So I take it that's his audition for the fish monster in The Shape of Water. And he's done other roles as well. Like he's also has roles in like Crimson Peak and Pan's Labyrinth and stuff. He is an amazing character actor, and I love the different creatures that he plays in the remarkable Guillermo del Toro film. But I've had greater respect for him as an actor now that I've seen all of the Guillermo. Oh, I haven't seen Nightmare Alley yet, but all the other Guillermo del Toro films I've watched for the first time and rewatched.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've been such a fan of Guillermo del Toro, and it's like finally he's getting the respect he deserves with Nightmare Alley being nominated for Best Picture, which I did not see coming, to be perfectly honest. I have not seen the movie yet, but I announce on HBO Max I will, and people are like, Nightmare Alley, come on. But it's like, well, the Academy sees something in it, so hey, you never know.
Yep. I'm just happy he's getting love, honestly, because I think he was ignored from the Academy for many years. I think Pan's Labyrinth got some like visual nominations, but people are like, why didn't that get nominated for Best Picture? And people were, I think he had an earlier film called The Devil's Backbone, which was kind of like his precursor to Pan's Labyrinth, which was a criminally overlooked film that so many people love, and that didn't get any love. And now we got The Shape of Water, which won Best Picture, and that's kind of like the game changer for like Guillermo as like this big auteur director that the Academy can take seriously. And as much as I can pick on the Academy, I like that they respect Guillermo del Toro because he has a lot of cool things to say, especially visually.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And then another movie I watched, continuing in my Wes Anderson series, I revisited The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, which stars Bill Murray as the title character. He is a marine biologist who makes documentary films, but he's lost his touch because people cannot take him seriously, and he seems bored at his job because he's an old grizzled guy. And after his closest friend gets killed by a rare jaguar shark, he ends up going on another expedition to find the shark and go on a path of revenge, kind of like Moby Dick, pretty much, kind of like that story, but in Wes Anderson style. And so you have an all-star cast in this movie. You got Bill Murray, you got Owen Wilson as the character who may or may not be Steve Zissou's son. You got Kate Blanchett in the movie, who is so unrecognizable in the movie. Like I didn't know it was her until I looked it up because she has a different look compared to other movies, and she's really good in the movie. But I didn't recognize her when I first saw the movie. You also got Willem Dafoe in the movie. You got Michael Gambon in the movie, Dumbledore in the later Harry Potter films. It's cool seeing him show up. Jeff Goldblum is in the film. Angelica Houston. It's got a great cast. You got an all-star, an epic soundtrack from David Bowie. David Bowie songs are prominent in the soundtrack, and that's always a plus. I don't know if it's the best Wes Anderson film, and if this is the first Wes Anderson film you watch, you might not like it because it's definitely more surreal and nonsensical compared to some of his other movies. But I think if you're an established Wes Anderson fan and want to see like definitely one of his more offbeat entries in his filmography, it is definitely worth checking out. And I think it's one of his more hidden gem, underrated films.
Yeah, this is another one I haven't seen. I've seen most of Wes Anderson's animated stuff, which is all great. And then I've seen Moonrise Kingdom, which I think is phenomenal. But I haven't seen his early work, and I do really need to get on top of that.
Yeah, this is definitely one to check out. And I also highly recommend Rushmore as well if you haven't seen it. And then another movie. When I saw the anime film Bill in theaters a month ago, I decided, okay, I need to cover more anime on my YouTube channel. And so I'm like, I'm going to try to do one anime a month, whether a movie I've seen or the many, many animes I have not seen. So to kick off this project, I revisited Your Name, which came to my existence several years ago when Chris Stuckman reviewed the film and absolutely loved it. I've seen the film twice in my life, and it is one of the best animes I've ever seen. I think if you're not into animated films in general and you're in the mindset that, oh, animation is just a kiddie thing, no, you need to watch Your Name because there's a lot of mature elements within the movie. Like it tackles two different people with adult issues having complicated lives. And there's a lot of like weird genre blends in the movie. It starts off as like this body swap comedy, kind of like Freaky Friday. And then there's a romance that starts to blossom. And then there's like a sudden shift and it becomes all serious in the second half of the movie. If you haven't seen the film, I won't dive into spoilers, but there's a sudden shift that happens and it makes the film more of an emotional roller coaster. And I think having that shift, I think not only improves the movie as a whole, but it makes the film such an emotionally gripping experience. The first half of the movie is really good because it sets up the characters, but then once the genre and tone shift, it becomes one of the most amazing pieces of animation I've ever seen in my life. I think it's a really great movie and it's a great gateway into the anime side in the world of animation.
Yeah, this is my friend Rachel over at Rachel Reviews. This is her favorite movie of all time,
Wow.
and it's like one that she just won't stop talking about. Haven't seen this one, but I've seen Makoto Shinkai's other movie, Weathering with You. It came to my local theater as a Fathom event, and it was outstanding. I was just, oh my god, it's amazing. And I was telling Rachel about it. I was telling Rachel about it. She was like, you need to see Your Name, and I still have yet to see it. So I do need to get on top of that as well.
I guess I'll need to check out Weathering with You. That's one I've heard of, but I never saw it. And now that I know it's from the same director, I'm even more excited to check it out. I guess that'll be a review coming on my anime project going forward. I think lastly, I want to share the two movies that I saw in theaters this past week. I finally checked out Belfast, which was re-released on the theaters after it got nominated for Best Picture. It's funny that I watched Belfast because like the week prior, Death on the Nile was the movie I saw. So I saw two Kenneth Branagh directed films back to back. And I do highly enjoy both of them for what they are. Belfast, I think I've seen as like the front runner for Best Picture. And I watched the film and I was like, the movie's fine. I don't love the movie. I don't think it's an amazing movie by any means, but there's great elements to it. I love the fact that it's shot in black and white to add a sense of nostalgia to the movie. I like the performances. I thought the child acting, especially, was fantastic. And I enjoyed some of the supporting performances like Kieran Hines and Judi Dench as the grandparents. I also think it's a great love letter to movies, as the main kid is obsessed with movies and likes going to the movie theater. I think that's a relatable thing to any film fan. I also think that's cool that Kenneth Branagh placed Easter eggs into the film to like highlight his own career, as this is like his personal story movie. He grew up in Belfast, Ireland, much like the characters in the movie. There's one part of the movie where you see an Agatha Christie book, and you're like, oh yeah, Kenneth Branagh directed Murder on the Orient Express. Cool Easter egg. Another kid, the same kid's reading a Thor comic book in one scene. Like, oh yeah, he directed Thor. That's pretty cool. So there's some cool aspects of this movie. It's not a movie that I'll gravitate towards, I guess. It's a movie that I enjoyed seeing it, but it's not one that I'll revisit every so often. I think it's a good movie, but it's not one that resonates with me. Although it is a well-crafted movie, I can definitely see why you put it as one of your best of the year if anybody loves the movie. I think it's a good movie, but I don't think it's like a mind-blowing experience. But it's a good movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed this as well. I took my dad to see it, and we both really enjoyed it. My favorite scene in the movie is when they go to see Chitty Bang Bang, and it gets to the scene where Chitty Bang Bang drives off the cliffs, and it's like, oh, you think they're gonna fall, but then they start to fly, and just seeing the audience go, and it's like that's amazing. Like that's
Yeah.
why I love the movie theater so much. If the right circumstances arise, you all could like be in tune with each other in the same emotions.
Yeah, that was pretty much the whole theater when we saw like Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man No Way Home are recent examples of that type of experience. And it's great seeing that when they're in your own life or when it's reflected in movie. And I can relate to that family as well. Even though I never saw Chitty Chitty Bang Bang on the big screen. I remember when I first saw that movie as a kid and that car was going off the cliff, I was like, what? And then like you're meant to believe it crashes into a cliff. And I think it was the first time that I ever noticed there was an intermission that they used to do in front of old movies, and it had it on the DVD release that we used to have. And I'm like, wait, what happened? Is the movie over? That was my reaction.
Yeah, that was my first experience with an intermission. Also, Lawrence of Arabia. About 5 or 6 years ago, Lawrence of Arabia was re-released in my local theater through TCM, and that movie's nearly 4 hours long. And so, because of that, there is an intermission, and there was about a 10 or 15 minute intermission. They put up a timer on the clock, and my dad and I were like, "So intermission, eh?" And that was when it was like, and he would tell me stories about how he went to see it with his dad, and how that intermission was meant for everybody to go outside and smoke really quick.
I think it's also a good time to go to the bathroom as well, especially for a movie that long.
Yeah, it absolutely good.
Well, there's
I love Lawrence of Arabia, but you can't have it on in the background. Like you have to be like locked in and watching that. Like you can't like have it on and like be editing. It would be like all right, Lawrence of Arabia. Well, there's 4 hours gone.
yeah, yeah, you gotta like sit back and appreciate just the sheer spectacle of that movie. I definitely agree. And then the other movie that I saw in theaters was Uncharted. And that movie, I had so much fun watching that movie. And now it might be because I've never played the games. I'm not one of those picky people that are like, oh, this movie's not good because the actors weren't cast right. See, I can't judge that. I haven't played the Uncharted games. I'm just seeing a movie with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. And the movie I saw, I enjoyed. I thought Tom Holland was great as Nathan Drake. I love the physicality that he brought to the role. I like that he did a good chunk of his own stunts. I thought he was great in that character. Mark Wahlberg, I think, might have been one of the weak links for me overall. Like he felt like he was playing Mark Wahlberg in your typical Mark Wahlberg role, but I think he grew into the character by the end of it. And now that the movie's doing so well, and I know we're going to get Uncharted 2, I am excited to see more of Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg together and growing into these characters. I enjoyed the action set pieces, especially the finale with the flying boats. I thought that was a really cool and imaginative sequence. I thought the film overall was good. I think there's aspects that I feel like could have been better. Like I think the movie could have fleshed out its characters a bit better. Honestly, they did a repeated gag where characters would double cross each other, which was a great subversion to the genre, but I think it undercut character development at the same time. And I think that was one of my big issues with the movie. And as much as I love Antonio Banderas, I feel like he was badly wasted in the film. He was good in the scenes we had him, but I'm like, really? They signed Antonio up for that? And I was a bit disappointed in that. But overall, I highly enjoyed Uncharted. It was a very fun experience seeing it in theaters, and I'm excited to see more from this franchise.
Well, you see, I have played all of the Uncharted games, and I had a great time with this. I can understand why someone wouldn't like it, especially someone who has played the games, but as someone who has played the games, I thought it represented the Uncharted like game series pretty well. I, uh, it represented the combat well. Tom Holland surprisingly fit in as Nathan Drake. Mark Wahlberg is a very curious choice, but I have a feeling that because the movie is nearing the $100 million mark, which I would have never guessed this movie would have made that much, but there it is. Now that it is approaching that, I have a feeling that they're going to do more of these and they're going to slowly age Mark Wahlberg. At least that's what I hope they do. And this was about as good as an Uncharted movie as I could have ever asked for. And it's really about 10 years in the making, because I remember hearing about this in like 2011. And like, oh, it's in development with Mark Wahlberg. And I'm like, oh no. But surprisingly, it was actually a lot better than I could have predicted.
Yeah, it was a highly enjoyable movie. I think the theater I was at, it was actually jam packed, which surprised me because I didn't think I'd get a full house seeing this movie, especially the way things are with like COVID and stuff. And it seemed like the only big crowd movies would be like your Marvel movies, and that's it. But there was a really good sized crowd seeing Uncharted, and there was a lot of great laughter in the movie during some of the more over the top sequences and some of the banter between characters. I'm like, this is what going to the movies is for. I love this experience. I'm glad to be seeing that once again after the pandemic. I think it's great seeing that.
Yeah, my theater was surprisingly busy, and and I'm not talking about like No Way Home, because No Way Home it was packed, but it's getting to the point now where it's getting steady again. And people are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, movie theaters are dying." I doubt that very severely. As someone who's worked in a theater for 3.5 years, there are ebbs and there are flows. And sometimes there is an ebb. But when there's a flow, oh man, it's a flow. And so like it's especially true with like a Star Wars movie or an MCU movie, especially a big one. But anyway, that's another topic for another time.
All right. And that's all that I've watched this past week. What did you check out?
So first of all, I checked out Kimmy on HBO Max. This is the new Steven Soderbergh movie, and it's my favorite new release of the year so far. I thought it was really well done. It tells the story of a woman who works for a company that produces the legally non-distinct Amazon Echo. It's a different company, but it's pretty much one of those like, hey Alexa, like one of those devices. She goes in and corrects the software on the back end. Like, so if someone is like looking for a song that the device doesn't know, she puts the song in. And when she's doing her job, she realizes that she may have heard a very grisly crime on one of them. And so when she goes to take it to the higher ups, they're like, "That's great. Give it to us and let's just pretend this never happened." And she's like, "No, I'm not doing that." And so the movie is a cat and mouse game. And I was worried about the movie because this movie was not only filmed during COVID, but actually it actually acknowledges COVID and plays into it. And I'm not a big fan of that because I'm not really a big fan of just like I just want to escape from it. I don't really want it to be brought up. But it actually works in pretty well because the main character, played by Zoe Kravitz, is actually agoraphobic. And so that combined with COVID, she pretty much just doesn't want to leave the house, but she does. And Steven Soderbergh does an excellent job of building up the whole her leaving her house thing, which is something basic for like you and me. But for her, it's like just the scariest thing you could ever imagine. The movie is actually pretty short at just under 90 minutes, so it is an incredibly quick watch. But Steven Soderbergh outdid himself yet again. I wouldn't say this is my favorite of his. I still think it's Logan Lucky. However, he's just proven that if you give him like some leeway, he'll go pretty far. It's like this is the second movie of his to drop on HBO Max that I just love. That and No Sudden Move.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of his HBO Max movies, but I do like the output that he has put out, especially the Ocean's trilogy, and like you've said, Logan Lucky, which is severely underrated.
Logan Lucky is
I I
excellent.
enjoy those movies. I do need to check out those, and I'll definitely check it out thanks to your very positive recommendation on the film. Zoe Kravitz, I can't wait to see her as the Catwoman. I think she's gonna be one of the standouts in the entire movie, and I can't wait to see what she's gonna bring to that character when compared to some of the other remarkable talents who've played her in the past. I can't wait to see how she'll stack with like Michelle Pfeiffer, who's currently my favorite Catwoman, but I like Anne Hathaway as well. So there was some strong competition, but I have no doubt Zoe's going to excel and bring her own stamp to an iconic character in the Batman franchise.
Yeah, because Zoe Kravitz is unrecognizable in Kimmy because, like, in Kimmy, she's kind of like standoffish. She doesn't want to go outside for any reason. And in the Batman, she's like the complete opposite of that. So it's going to be fun to see how she approaches that. And then I watched Batman Forever, which we already discussed when you were talking about Batman Begins. And like I said, I don't hate the movie. It does have its problems, but I think there is a better movie in between the lines if you're willing to look through there. I saw Uncharted, which I talked about and said that it was a lot of fun. And then to round off my portion of this, I watched the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I'm
Oh,
still trying to recover the brain cells that died from when I was watching it.
I saw your review of that movie and I just couldn't stop rolling my eyes over some of the things you brought up in that part of the video. Like I knew the film was going to be bad when I saw the trailer and that one guy's like, "Stop Leatherface or you'll be canceled." I'm like,
That is just
"Oh,
that's just
no."
the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to spoil it because no one should be seeing it, so I'll just spoil it here. There is, among other things referenced in this movie, gun violence, police brutality, and Elsie Fisher's character being the survivor of a school shooting. All in a movie about some fat guy in a leather face mask whipping around a chainsaw. For a movie that should have been the easiest thing in the world to make, boy, David Blue Garcia said to himself, "You know what this perfectly good wheel needs? Some corners."
Yeah, like I have no problem with those issues being executed in the movie. It's got to be done well, and it needs to come off in a way to where it respects the audience instead of like panders to it or makes this like big overly preachy message about it. And it sounds like this movie, from what you're saying, completely missed the mark on that completely.
Oh, wholeheartedly. And it also makes it worse because the main girl from the original, Sally Hardesty, she has only one scene. She could have been easily edited out of the movie and it would have been no different. And it's so blatantly obvious that they go for the whole like Laurie Strode and Halloween Kills route that you just question outside of that why they even brought her back. It's just really sad. But
It's like false advertising because I saw the trailer and I thought she was like the main character of the movie. I'm like, really? She's in one scene. That would tick off so many fans of the original movie. And I'm not even a big fan of the original movie. Like, I thought it was okay, but I've seen better horror movies. So this movie, I'm staying away by a country mile for sure. I do not care to see this garbage.
yeah, you are very smart. However, I will preview, I guess, for Scary Mania this year on my channel. One of the movies I am going to be planning on covering is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 because I've heard the movie is different, and I'm going to be covering mostly sequels this time around. So it's going to be fun to see what happens there. But that's all the stuff that I've watched this past week. What have you all been watching? Leave it in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. But let's dive into the main event for the evening and talk about streaming movies. I feel like, Jacob, I think we both have been picking up on how streaming movies have just been getting better in the past like few years, because I remember fondly when Netflix announced that they were going to be producing their own stuff. One of the originals that they were talking about doing was the original, not the original House of Cards, but House of Cards starring Kevin Spacey. And I was thinking to myself, the DVD service you get in the mail, they're going to be starting doing stuff like, just forget it. But the series ended up being A, super popular, and B, really good. And so that just opened the door for Netflix to start making their own stuff. And not only making their own stuff, but getting positive critical response and getting awards buzz. I remember where I was when Roma, the Alfonso Cuarón movie, and a Netflix exclusive, was announced for Best Picture. And so you're getting Netflix, you're getting Amazon producing their own things. You get Hulu, you got HBO Max doing their own stuff. It feels like in this streaming war that we're in, maybe it's just a gamble to see like which directors they can get, but it's like streaming has gone from like the thing you just go in your free time to do to getting like actual directors like on board for it. Like Apple TV Plus has gotten Martin Scorsese to do a movie for them. That's not like some like first year director. This is Martin Scorsese we're talking about here. And so I guess this is a conversation ruminating on how far really streaming has come. And this could be a multi-part series on this podcast. But I think just to get the ball rolling, Jacob, what have you been noticing about this trend?
It's interesting because if you had told me like several years ago that there'd be so many streaming services battling out over who has the top content on the internet, I would call you crazy because I would have thought that would be the stupidest idea you could ever be because, I grew up, watching movies in theaters and, having the DVDs and Blu-rays, and I still support physical media. Don't get me wrong. There's advantages and disadvantages to physical versus streaming. And so I didn't get into like streaming services. I don't think it wasn't until our family got stronger internet service, as our old internet service was bad. Once we upgraded our internet service and it could support, high speed internet, and you can go on streaming services and not have any bufferings or any of that stuff and just have uninterrupted stuff. That's when I started getting into like Netflix and other stuff. And when I first got on Netflix, I think probably, yeah, it was about, I like to say late 2018, early 2019 when I was starting my YouTube channel. I think was about when I started getting into streaming services. And I started noticing that there were some legit content, especially on Netflix. Like around that time, Alfonso Cuarón just released Roma, which was a great movie. And then we had uh, then around 2019, Martin Scorsese made The Irishman, which I wasn't fully blown away by that movie, but it was still a well done movie, and it was impressive that he made a big scale gangster movie on a streaming platform, which was in high quality. And then we had other remarkable movies as well. And then some of the TV shows that Netflix has put out have been fantastic and are in even as just as impressive of quality as feature length films. Shows like Stranger Things and The Umbrella Academy and just other remarkable shows that have defined that streaming service. And then we've got other great streaming services that have been coming along: Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Hulu, Disney Plus, and there's just really good content on these streaming services if you have the right talent, the right writers, and the right people involved to create content of movies that are just as good as quality as movies that are regularly being put out in theaters. Like, I am impressed by the overall output on a lot of these streaming services. I love the Marvel and Star Wars content we're getting on Disney Plus, and I enjoyed seeing stuff like the Snyder Cut on HBO Max and the Peacemaker series, which I recently finished and was really, really good. And Amazon Prime, I need to watch more of their original content, but I do enjoy the output of stuff, past and present, that they have on the streaming service. And I've seen the original film, Sound of Metal, which was a fantastic movie. So there's some really good stuff on all these streaming services. You just got to know where to look, and you got to know where to look and just see where these movies take you when you find these remarkable movies. And it's impressive, Ryan, like you said, that even the Oscars are paying attention to these movies. Some of them are being nominated for Best Picture. I think Roma was the first streaming film to be nominated for Best Picture. I think The Irishman got nominated for Best Picture. And then I know this upcoming Oscar season, I know several streaming films got nominated. I think Don't Look Up, Power of the Dog, and I think Coda got nominated as well, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a good chunk of streaming movies that got nominated for Best Picture, and it'll be interesting to see what's going to come with that. And we'll definitely get a streaming service exclusive movie that'll win Best Picture one of these days. It might even be this season. Who knows? Depending on what ends up winning. It's really interesting seeing what's coming about, seeing all these streaming services compete, create really good content, and some of which are even getting Oscar attention. It's really interesting seeing that play out.
Yeah, and I think I should note that there's some crap on streaming services too. Let's not get
Yeah.
that twisted. And there is some stuff that's just mediocre. However, it's funny because it was like like once upon a time it was kind of passed over, but now it like you said, there's at least two or three streaming movies that were nominated for Best Picture. Mitchell's versus the Machines, which even though it's technically a Sony movie, it got on Netflix, and so that's nominated as well. And so you got that, and then not to mention there's a movie on Netflix called El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. I love Breaking Bad. And Breaking Bad did so well on Netflix that Netflix approached Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould and was like, "You want to make an epilogue?" And they were like, "Okay." And it turned out to be really good. So streaming is definitely where the wind is blowing right now. And people will say like, "Oh, it's just streaming, who cares?" Like Francis Ford Coppola, like, and Martin Scorsese definitely discounting it, but I mean, they discount most everything modern cinema nowadays. So at a certain point, you're just like, all right, just go yell at some clouds, why don't you? But that's definitely it feels like it's definitely where the wind is blowing and will be continuing to blow for quite some time.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see where this goes. And yeah, we, like you said, we do have some stinkers within all the streaming services. Netflix has a ton of subpar to just downright bad original movies. Of course, Disney Plus has Home Sweet Home Alone, which was like the worst movie I saw in 2020. But in between all that stuff, there's I think more so good stuff on a lot of these streaming services than downright bad stuff. And like even when you see a movie in theaters, I always feel like when you look for them, there's more good movies than there are bad. Usually the bad movies are the ones that stick out and there's not as much effort put into these movies. But when you look at most movies that are being made, I feel like there is genuine effort being put into a lot of these movies, whether the big budget theatrical experiences or even the streaming movies. And you just gotta appreciate what these people do for a living at the end of the day, whether you watch it in theaters or on a streaming service. There's always an audience for these movies, and regardless of whether you see them, these movies are something. Wait a minute, wow, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, Ryan.
No, it's cool.
Just however you view movies, it's a great escape. Whenever you see the movie or not, whether theaters or on streaming, it's a great escapism to just appreciate the art form. Pretty much, might have botched that, but that's what I'm going with. I think streaming is an interesting way of approaching movies going forward. I know some people feel like theaters are phasing out thanks to COVID, but I think you can balance the two together. I think there's a place for streaming and there's a place for theaters. I prefer seeing big budget movies in theaters, but a lot of your small indie Oscar crowd type movies I'd much rather watch at home personally. So there's a good balance between what type of genre works, and I think they should complement each other at the end of the day.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to cover this again at a later date, kind of like a state of streaming or something like that. But what do you guys think of this whole issue? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to read what you'd have to say about that. And that's it. That's episode 8 of Life in the Movies. Thank you all so much for watching and for listening. Jacob, where can people find you?
Well, people can find me on Letterboxd, Twitter, Facebook, and of course my two main YouTube channels. My big YouTube channel, which is under my own name, Jacob Martin, is where I do my movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, all that fun stuff. I have a lot of content coming on my channel this week. The video that dropped as we're recording this on Monday is the Shape of Water video. And other videos that are coming this week. Got a review of the Pink Panther remake and a collab with Dave from the channel Interpreting the Stars. Other videos coming this week include reviews of The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Lost my focus there. Oh yeah, the anime Your Name, and then upcoming Celebrating Disney review for Treasure Planet, which I'm so excited to work on that video. And my next Superhero Saturdays video will be a collab video with the channel Rashad G Reviews as we cover the infamous Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. And then over on my second channel, Storytime with Jacob, is where I do all the book reviews and read-alongs. As mentioned already, I'm currently going through To Kill a Mockingbird, which has been a fantastic read. There's a lot of awesome content you can check out on both my channels, and hopefully you'll be able to check out some amazing stuff over there when you're done watching this.
Yeah, both of those channels and his social media will be linked in the description of the video. And as far as this channel goes, by the time this video goes up, it will be Wednesday, and Thursday Jacob will be joining me to review Batman and Robin, which, I mean, that is what that is, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. And if you liked this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below. And if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam. That's Jacob Martin. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.